this morning, of course, it's Friday, and we have our good friend Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics Podcast hanging with me here in studio. Good morning, Karen.
Hello, good morning. I'm just sitting here watching how the sausage is made, and
sometimes it's pretty, and sometimes it's like,
it can get messy up in here.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
Good to be with you. Glad you're in this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we also have the blessing, I'll call it, of having one of our state representatives with us here in Illinois. For those of you who don't know, we do have lots of great state representatives, even though you might be in another state. Illinois is a good state to model yourselves after if you're in a red state and you're a blue, progressive, liberal Democrat and you want to see how things get done, talking about how the sausage is made. But with us this morning is Representative Cam Buckner, Democrat from the 26th District, also the Assistant Majority Leader. Good morning, Representative.
Good morning, Richard. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Welcome to the show. We are so glad to have you with us this morning. And I will dive right into, as I say, the deep end of the pool. You have been a busy, busy representative. And I think the people in the state of Illinois, and specifically in your district, are proud as heck that you are leading in the way in which you have. So I first want to come out of the gate and say thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your commitment. I know that on Monday we were going to have you on, and you got pulled into a meeting with Mayor Johnson. So, or was it Mayor Johnson or Governor Pritzker? Let me get that right.
Mayor Johnson.
And how did things go with that meeting and other meetings that I know in the broad sense you're a part of right now, because you guys have so much work on the state level that you're doing. Talk a little bit about some of your key assignments, some of your key work that you are involved in right now.
Yeah, well, Richard, there is no shortage of work, right? Illinois has some big obstacles, some big challenges, but we also have some really large opportunities as well to not just lead the charge here in the state for the people, 12.5 million Illinoisans and the folks who live in Chicago and in my district, but for the country. I think the country is looking at Illinois, as you said earlier, as a model on how to get it right on what state government can do in very tumultuous times, how we respond and react and protect based on what may be happening in Washington, both in the White House and in Congress, right? And so, when we talk about ensuring that we have a real plan when it comes to making sure our schools are fully funded, making sure that we are doing the right things on climate justice, making sure that we understand that criminal legal reform is not just based on cops and law enforcement, but it's doing the right things when it comes to schools and housing and the things that people need to survive and to not be involved in crime and violence, right? And so for us, that is a huge task, but it's an important one, and I really do believe that Illinois has the opportunity to lead the way for these next 4 years and into the future.
So two things about the next 4 years. I know that I say this on our show, Representative, pretty much every day. The fight starts right now. It's every morning when we wake up and put our feet on the floor, those of us who are in the fight, and we all are. Before you came on, we had a caller that asked a question about something that I wasn't expecting to ask you, so I'm not trying to blindside you. I just have to ask it because it's one that I know you have put a lot of work into, and that's what she asked about is this. Richard, what are we going to do about voter suppression in America? And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that because you are one of the leaders. You're the Assistant Majority Leader here in Illinois. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about what we need to do when it comes to voter suppression, because it's a real thing.
Voter suppression is a big deal, and unfortunately, we've not paid much attention to it, right? It's been a trickle, right? And that trickle now has turned into this large lake of pushback against democratic principles and ideals. We've got to find a way to hold state governments, county governments, municipal governments, all the folks who are a part of the voter or the election function. We got to call it the task and make sure that we're doing the right thing in those spaces. In Illinois, we've been okay. We've been doing the right things and we've been strong, but we can even strengthen our work a little bit more. When we talk about giving people the right to do what they are supposed to do, vote, right? Way too often we just take that for granted as if it's a foregone conclusion. But when you look at states around this country, when you look at many of the swing districts around this country, you look at the electoral map, we know where voter rolls were purged, and we know what the results were. In fact, even here in Illinois, if you take a look at the Illinois legislative website, you'll see that there are a number of voter purge and voter suppression bills currently being filed in Springfield by many of my Republican colleagues, many of whom live south of Interstate 80, right? And so this is not something that's theoretical. It's a big deal. And so for us, we got to double down on this. And we got to find a way to make sure that we're singing out of the same hymn book with folks around the country to make sure that folks have this right and they're not being disenfranchised, and that we're pushing back when these bills come up. But I also will say, Richard, is that I've been warning people in this Trump administration that there are two different functions of Trump's government, right? One is thunder, one is lightning. Thunder is very loud, it's clamorous, however, it is not that dangerous. No one's ever died from thunder. Lightning will kill you. But so often, thunder takes all the air out of the room because you're concerned with that sound and you're missing what's going on. We cannot miss the lightning that is voter suppression. It's happening right in front of our eyes, and it's trying to change the complexion and the landscape of our electorate nationally. We got to push back.
Thunder and lightning. I haven't heard it put that way, not just in the conversation around voter suppression, but so many other things that are happening. It's maybe the phrase that I use is watch the hand, the shining object, one hand over here. Meanwhile, they're snatching stuff from your pockets. It's your version. Thunder and lightning is your version of this is loud and boisterous. And people pay attention to that because it's loud and boisterous. But the other thing that you don't see is how the lightning is as you put it, could kill you. And that's so well put. You mentioned something that I want to come back to, upstate, downstate, in terms of voter suppression here in Illinois. What's that been looking like? Republicans, you said, south of Route 80, did you say, are leaning into legislation for voter suppression or just tools that they find in their toolkit?
They've been filing legislation for the last couple of years that would purge voter rolls and suppress the right to vote for many people around this state. There are massive voter ID laws and things of that sort that have been filed in Illinois. Now, one of the things that we have working in our favor is that we have a supermajority, both in the House and the Senate. We've got strong leaders in Speaker Welch and President Harmon who are pushing back on that. And so those type of bills don't have much opportunity in our legislature. However, I just use those points to remind people that we are not that far out of the woods here in Illinois. And the Bruce Rauner days were not a decade, 22 or 3 decades ago. They were just, in our recent memory. And so when we talk about being diligent and being vigilant and making sure that we're staying the course, we cannot just feel like we've got it all together here because we're in good old blue Illinois. It's not as blue as you think.
Yeah, and that's one of the concerns that a lot of people are saying we as Democrats have to talk more about because of the fact that we aren't that far away from the Rauner years. So to that end, we had a guest on yesterday. His name is Brian Lemech with Defend the Vote. And he talked about the suppression and how it is it's sneaky in some ways. Sometimes it is the thunder, and sometimes it's the lightning. It's very sneaky because it's happening in areas where people think it's not happening, i.e. the state of Illinois. We also talked about the SAVE Act. So if you could lean in a little bit on your thoughts, your observations, maybe what you guys are doing to try to push back on the deadliness of the SAVE Act.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to agree with the earlier note that you made just about the fact that restrictive voter ID laws and some of this disproportionate effects that we've seen in states like Illinois, we just got to keep paying attention to it. But as far as the SAVE Act is concerned, obviously the primary objective of this is to suppress the right to vote nationally. And when you look at the climate that we're in right now, they're really politicizing this processes in a way that it's going to purge millions of folks off the road. It's going to make many of us disenfranchised in this space. I want to thank the congressional folks, especially the Illinois delegation folks like Senator Durbin, who have pushed back and given significant opposition in this space. The League of Women Voters have been huge on this. But these measures will disproportionately affect communities of color. We know they're going to disproportionately affect low-income folks and other marginalized groups. So this is a throwback to a bygone era, which we cannot retreat to. When Trump talks about making America great again, that again that we've always pushed back on, what Congressman Roy is trying to do in Texas is a perfect example of what that retreating backwards is, and we can't stand for it.
Well, it's an example, and I called it what I think it is, and that's a poll tax, and like counting marbles or jelly beans in a jar. That's just what it is, and I'm hoping that there's a national or federally elected House of Representatives member or Senate member that will call it that during a press conference, so that people who are not paying attention, that are not the Cam Buckners of the world, will just call it as it is. It is a poll tax, and listen, I'm sometimes a very literal and visual person. Have a big old jar of jelly beans sitting on the dais, or sitting on the lectern, or whatever thing is called, when they're talking about it, so people can go, oh yeah, I've been alive long enough to remember that. So I appreciate you breaking that down in terms of what the SAVE Act is really trying to do. I have another question for you regarding the work that you do as an assistant majority leader. What does that encompass? I mean, that's a big A job. Excuse my language, but it just is.
Well, I was assistant majority leader in the last General Assembly. I had the pleasure and privilege in this General Assembly of being elevated to Speaker Pro Tem and Chief Budgeteer, which I really thank Speaker Welch for his faith in me. But as Speaker Pro Tem and a member of the leadership team for the Speaker, a lot of what I do is try to manage the issues within our own membership. We have 78 Democrats in the Illinois House. That is a super duper majority, we like to call it. And folks come from all over. We've got progressives from the city of Chicago. We've got moderates from DuPage County and the collar counties. We've got conservative Democrats from downstate and places like the Metro East near the St. Louis border, right? And so when you've got a big tent like that, you've got a lot of different personalities, a lot of different issues, a lot of different things that are a part of the conversation. And so a lot of the work that I do and to help the Speaker with is to kind of bring us together, keep us coalesced as a large party, as a large tent, as a large caucus, right? And I also have the honor of working as a negotiator on the state budget for the 12.5 million people who live in this state. As you know, a budget is a big piece of what state government does. And as I was telling someone yesterday, the thing about state budgets in Illinois, they're often like Chicago deep dish pizza, right? It's layered, it's ambitious, and depending on who you ask, it's either brilliant or way too much to digest. And so that is probably where I spend my most time. The majority of my time is trying to work with folks around the state to make sure that we have a budget that's balanced. And when I say balanced, it's not just fiscally, but a budget that's balanced morally. And
particularly to the communities that fit into that moral part of the conversation. To your point about diversity and big tent of Democrats, we have State Representative Harry Benton will be with us in the 7:30 hour, and you guys all have to work together. And I love what you said about making sure that as Speaker Pro Tem, that folks are lining up and doing what they got to do, because I've said for a long time, and many progressives have said, and my good colleague Karen Byrne, who's here with us in studio, have said, one of the biggest challenges that you guys face in those leadership roles is getting everybody to line up and stay in line, and the energy and the power of that mass being in line is when you get stuff done. So kudos to you for having that role, but you're a big boy, so no disrespect, but you know when you step to the mic, they got to pay attention.
Oh yeah. Well, it's not easy, but it's necessary work, and I do appreciate my colleagues for their willingness to be a part of this big tent. Yeah,
I have to ask you this question regarding the supermajority. How do we keep those numbers? How do we keep it super? Because it's effective, I believe. It's not perfect, but it's been effective. Yeah. What do you see is the message or the way forward to make sure we're keeping the supermajority? And then layered into that question is a second part. What do you have as suggestions to Democrats, and I say this respectfully, to your relationships that are in other states that are fighting to keep their majority or even swing the balance to a majority? So two-part question. How do we keep it here, and what are you doing to work with your colleagues in other states to help them out?
I think there are a few things. I think we have to remain very consistent with our true north, right? Who we are as a party, and why the work that we do and the issues that we care about are important to the people of Illinois. I always remind our members that we've got to do three things. We got to be inspirational, we got to be aspirational, but most importantly, we've got to be operational. We got to show people that all of this stuff works, right? And so we continue to churn out good policy and to be able to show results. That it helps people when they're knocking doors and walking in their community to talk to folks, right? So I think that's number one. Number two, we've got to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on in this state. We got to hear people and hear what's important to them. As I travel my district from South Shore up to Streeterville, everyone is really saying one thing, and they care about rising costs and they care about raising kids. Can we make both of those things easier for them? And I think that we have tried to find ways to do that, and we should do more and continue to push on that. When you talk about someone like Representative Harry Benton, whose district is one that could very easily be Republican if we didn't do the right things and that they don't have the right rep there, and he's doing a great job. When you talk to the people in his district in Aurora and Bolingbrook and Naperville and Oswego and Plainfield, they just want to know that there's a plan. There's a plan forward, right? And so we've got to be bold. We can't be scared. Donald Trump is not the boogeyman, right? We're going to fight him. We're going to fight him, and the things that we do here are not going to be because of him. It's going to be in spite of him. And when he's gone, we'll still be doing the good work here in Illinois. And so we've got to show people that there's a plan moving forward. And to the folks around the country, Richard, I've got the great honor of having a lot of very close friends in legislatures around the country. I spent some time working in the state of Louisiana some years ago, and I've got a lot of friends in Baton Rouge and Madison, Wisconsin, and Tallahassee, Florida, and we talk a lot, especially during these uncertain times around President Trump. And what I'm reminding all of them is that they've got to stay the course. And one of the greatest things about our democracy is the power of federalism. Because the federal government is going to be chaotic, it is doubly time for state legislatures to do the work that we're supposed to do. We are the laboratories for democracy. We are the voice of the people. We are the tip of the spear. And they've got to take that job very seriously.
That is so profound and so right on. I appreciate you breaking it down. And the reason I asked the question about other areas is that a lot of times, you know, when we're in a largely blue state where we do have these, quote, supermajorities and a mindset that supports that because we do get things done, there are folks in other parts of the country, and you know this from your work, I know it from just my experience and paying attention, that are in a further, their tip of the scale is a little bit tougher than ours. So I appreciate that you are using your experience and your concern and desire to help folks in other areas. You've always got something going on in your district. You've always got an event. You've always got things happening. What's going on this spring? We're about to end the month of February, going into March, changing weather here in the Chicago area and the upper Midwest. What are some of the things that you and your team are going to be looking to do in these next, 3 to 6 months?
In the district, as far as community and constituent services stuff, we'll have a lot of events coming up, including street events and some ID events. As we know, the Real ID deadline is coming up for Illinois residents, and so that's coming up in May. And so if you don't have a Real ID, it's going to become very difficult for you to travel. Our office will work with Secretary of State Jim Lee's office on that to make sure that folks are getting that. And we remind folks all the time, even if you don't live in our district, you're still our people. And so if you need to reach out to us for anything, let us know if there's help with things that may be going on with seniors or children or anything that is of import. Our office is here to be helpful. So
2 things. One is, can we have you back on in maybe a month or so to talk about Real ID? A lot of people, there's a couple things that are going on, 3 things that are going on. Some people just don't even know. Some people that do know are freaked out, like, now what the hell do I do? Excuse my language. And then there's a group that are saying it's not real. So in denial to that. So I'd love to have you back on in a few weeks to talk about that as a tool to help people know how to navigate this process. And if you'd be open to that, we'll set it up so that we can have you back on to talk about. Would that be okay?
That would be absolutely great. We'll do it.
Okay. Now, last, as we wrap up, tell folks how they can find you, how folks can get involved. They may be in another district, but who cares? At this point, we have to use all of our tools, and all of our players means all of our players. How can folks follow you? How can they get behind what you're doing?
Yeah, they can find us on all things social media. Rep, R-E-P-CAM, K-A-M, Buckner, B-U-C-K-N-E-R. Our district website is Illinois26.com. And I totally agree with you, Richard. Listen, the issues that we face today are no respecter of geographical or political lines. It is a real fight, and we got to be in it. And so everybody that wants to get their hands dirty and roll up their sleeves, let's get to work.
There it is. We'll leave it there. Representative Cam Buckner, the 26th District, one of our real fighters, y'all, one of our real fighters. And he's a big boy, so don't mess around. Thanks, Representative, for being with us. And I left you with a smile on your face, so that's a good thing.
I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
We will. You be safe. Thank you.